Welcome to the Round Ball warm-up today on Wednesday, the 31st of March. I am your host, Neil Simons. Joining me is Cameron Wiper. Quite an interesting week in Australian football. Not much news in terms of transfers. Well, that's happened today, but just in the general scope of things, we've had a TV deal to speak about in the past couple of weeks, but nothing much this week in terms of that. We've got some new information. It's a new scenario that we'll be talking about later. But besides that, how'd you find the action on the weekend?
Yeah, another busy weekend. Season's really starting to take more shape. We're seeing, who are the real front runners now, and who are sort of the pretenders. And I think the big news is that Melbourne City are the team to beat. And no one's coming close to them at the moment. They are just running away with it. Not necessarily in the league table, but they're just on the best form of any team right now. You can make a case for Adelaide as well, but Melbourne City are playing the best football at the moment. It's very, very exciting weekend ahead as well, with some more games that are really going to we're starting to see this split between the finals teams and the teams that are outside of that top six, which is, we're being able to see this split, and it's much better, giving us a clearer picture of what we can expect for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think really to see the table being mashed up in terms of like inadequacies in terms of how many teams have played, and it's now sort of evening up together, which is brilliant, sort of synthesizing into this big cluster that we have at the moment. Also a coronavirus cluster in Brisbane, which is not going to be too great. So pretty much what we're going to talk about first, we'll talk about the A-League players who are international duty during the A-League finals. Now, this report came out last night. Sneaky Don Bossy, 7:30 headline. So essentially, this is Graham Arnold speaking on how many of the A-League players, up to 20 players, to be withdrawn for the Olyroos or Socceroos, more than 20 players, might I say. Me and Cameron, we've had quite an intense talk about this, an intense chat about it, and discussing, which players would stay, which players would go. We've actually drafted up a whole Excel spreadsheet to discuss the likely candidates for each A-League side. But I guess before we actually dive into that, Cameron, this is a startling revelation. Obviously, A-League not adopting for international windows due to obvious coronavirus concerns and the likes of. If this does eventuate, if in the case that the A-League finals will be depleted significantly by the perennial Socceroos and Olyroos, how will this affect the competition as a whole?
It's a bit of a leveler in terms of the best teams will lose their best players. I think the two teams that are going to be most affected by this are Melbourne City and the Central Coast Mariners. Melbourne City, they will lose their starting goalkeeper and their starting striker that is the top scorer in the league, amongst others potentially as well. So you lose two players like that, and they become a lot. It's a leveler in terms of there will be teams that will get better because of this. They will be significantly worse off. They will struggle to score goals, and they will also have to play a second fiddle goalkeeper that's not played at all this season. So it will be like a completely different team going into the finals. And the same can be said of the Mariners, who they will lose a lot of players to Olyroos duty. They'll lose likely Kai Rolls, which would be a big loss for them because he's been outstanding this season, alongside Ruud Tongik in defence. So it's a big shame that, the finals football, you're expecting the best players to be stepping up for their teams, making the difference, and ultimately trying to win a trophy, but they won't be there to compete at this, by the sounds of things, which is a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, no, it's extremely disappointing, and Look, we often can't get things to go our way. There's no way that the A League and the APL, respectively, could have predicted this completely unrealistic event to occur, where we're playing in a Toulon tournament, which is quite prestigious, and we're also playing in some 4 World Cup qualifiers with a 34-man squad to be selected. So there's a lot of variety for players to be sort of executed and selected, and I'm not sure how the player release thing will be undertaken, but that's a matter that will be addressed. But nonetheless, myself and Cammers, we have drafted up a very extensive list of all the individuals who are in line for an Olyroos appearance or Socceroos appearance and will thus miss the A-League finals, or just in general, the players who may leave possibly during the season as well, the regular season, like that last round or so. But we'll go from top to bottom. So we'll start with the Central Coast Mariners. We'll try and get through this as quickly as we can, but so Cameron has done the first 6. I've done the last 6 in terms of placing on the A-League table. And let us know in the comments if you believe that any of the places are wrong, in your opinion, if any of these players deserve to be in the squad that aren't in the list that we've put there. So clearly, on that left side, we put the Olyroos potential absentees. On the right, we put the Socceroos potential absentees, and then the remaining squad members on the far right. So with the Olyroos for the Mariners, we've got Kai Rolls, as you mentioned, Daniel Bowman, who's made a previous squad, Daniel Da Silva, who's made previous squads, Nisbet, who has not, and Gianni Stensness and Alu Qual haven't either. And Mark Birighitti is obviously having a career season, and he's likely in line for a Socceroos appearance. This would significantly deplete the Central Coast Mariners, who are only really left to Matty Simon, Clisby, Tonjik, Negro, Bozanic, Jankovic, Janota, and Simon, and Urenia as well to spur on their title challenge. This would be huge. I don't expect all those players to be selected for the Olyroos, but you'd expect about at least 3 or 4 out of those would be selected, right?
Yeah, I'd say out of them, the shoo-ins are Rouse and Da Silva. I think you can make a case for Nisbet getting one. I think that sort of holding midfielder role is quite competitive in the Olyroos side at the moment. Qual, if he picks up his form a little bit, he's got an outside chance. I think there's a lot of strength and depth in the striker position at the moment, and Qual only playing off the bench in the A-League isn't brilliant for his prospects. So he's an outside chance, but I'm not entirely sure he'll get that. And Daniel Bowman, I think, is the same. Again, midfield role is very competitive this year. And he's sort of starting every 1 in 3 games at the moment. He's not playing ridiculously regularly. And I think the big loss for the Mariners is Birighitti, who, as you said, career best season at the moment. He's been outstanding, and he has been for the last couple of years. But this season, it's been, they've had something to show for it. So to have to put in Adam Pearce, who's, he's an A-League standard goalkeeper, but he's not outstanding like Birighitti. It's going to be a huge loss, and it's something like goalkeeper error will decide finals at the moment. And you'll find that a lot of teams will lose their goalkeeper to Olyroos duty as well. Not just Mariners with Birighitti going to the Socceroos.
Yeah, I think, look, that's so unfortunate in a season, a 1 in 100 season for the Mariners. If you've taken everything into account, to be depleted significantly would be cataclysmic for them. One would hope that the squad isn't as depleted as we initially envisaged. However, Adelaide United also have some problems with their own. Craig Goodwin likely to get in Socceroos recall. Delianov in the line for Olyroos appearance if he's able to get fit in time and also keep playing as well as he has. Gochi, I think, is a sort of a 3-game wonder. Like, he's had 3 solid games and made that 1 good save. So I wouldn't say he's that much of a shoo-in. However, we put him there. Noah Smith is injured at the moment. I believe he's a groin injury. Timotheo hasn't had much game time in recent weeks, which is a concern for his aspirations. He has been in the squad in prior seasons, though. Louis Dorigo's a lock. Ryan Strain, I'd say, is a perennial lock. Alassane Toure has been pretty horrific this season, coming back from injury, of course. Mohamed Toure is also coming off an injury in the coming weeks, and Cassini Yengi's had essentially 3 good games as well. So out of those, we've got about 8 of those players, I might add. There aren't locks per se. However, Arnold has plenty to choose from Adelaide United.
Yeah, I state that these are potentials, but given that Delianov, I think at the start of this season would have been one of the 3
I agree, yeah.
goalkeepers. But if Joe Gauci, he manages to lock in this starting spot for the rest of the season, yeah, he's only had a short amount of games, but he's been quite impressive in that time. So what's to say he doesn't nail down that starting spot, because he's not got, if he keeps performing like he is going to knock Delianov off his perch, because Delianov has made a couple of clangers this season. He made one against Perth and he made one against Brisbane Roar.
Well, that was a deflection, but okay. Yeah.
It's been, Gauci's made obviously that outstanding save against Sydney, and also made one earlier in the game. And I think he was also rather solid in the game previously against Melbourne. Noah Smith, I think we've got better options at left back, and he's also got an injury. But he's got an outside chance. Louis Dorigo has to be part of that squad, really. Ryan Strain, again, probably has to be part of that squad. He's been pretty good this season, although he's had an injury. He's had a few injuries. Alassane Toure, there's a lot of time for him to get back into form. He hasn't had the best season, but there's every chance. Mohamed Toure has been fantastic when he has been playing, but again, he's got an injury. And Cassini Yengi, out of nowhere, big physical forward that can play up front or on the wing. I think we could do worse than to have him in the starting team if he continues his form that he has carried in the last couple of games. And then, Craig Goodwin has been essential to Adelaide's return to form. So he should get a call up to a 34-man squad. Yeah,
I think I agree with your sentiments regarding Craig Goodwin. Obviously, he's been outstanding this season. He's probably improved a little bit since the time he was last here. But I think we'll move on to Melbourne City. This has been the talk of Twitter. These are 6 players who have been cogs in the machine for City this season, bar Aidan O'Neill, who's obviously been injured, who's likely to miss out most of the season. You got Glover, who's a lock, Atkinson, who's a lock, Metcalf, who's definitely a lock, Aidan O'Neill, theoretically speaking, in an ideal world, he is, and McLaren and Nabu, who are bound to make that Socceroos squad. Who thought I'd say that Andrew Nabu would be anywhere near a Socceroos team last year? Now, City are in the best form that they've ever been in. History tells us that, as well as just the eloquent style of play they express on the pitch at AAMI Park. They've been stunning, absolutely stunning, have dominated teams from start to finish. And they love to have the second half blitz when they score 3 in 5 minutes. Some ridiculous number like that. Watching them play against the Western Sydney Wanderers and completely dismantled them and made them look second tier quality. I know Carl Robinson wanted to sit back and drive the play forward and look to drive between the lines and get those crosses into the likes of Duke and Nabini. However, City dominated from kickoff. And they are clear title favourites for myself this season. Let's not discount Adelaide United. They just haven't been as dominating in that run that they've had. So this would be a huge, huge loss for them. All of those players are huge losses by any stretch of the imagination. So what else is there to say?
What I would say is I think the remaining players that they have left are a better squad than what the Mariners would have left.
I agree with that.
So I don't think they're completely bust. I think given the attacking depth that they have, Sabaki knew.
I'm surprised you haven't put Curtis Good in the Socceroos, considering Graham Arnold has said he's in line for a recall himself.
Well, then he might be, but
yeah,
I think there are better defenders at the moment.
I agree with that as well. I don't think Curtis Good should be anywhere near a Socceroos squad until he gets a full season under his belt without getting injured.
Yeah, I think you've got the likes of Bailey Wright's playing regular football.
Get Jay Bagaloo in there. Surely he's in line for an appearance
for the Olyroos.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a case of, again, you look at that goalkeeper position. Those are two goalkeepers that are incredibly inexperienced. Should they have to turn to them? And Glover's been, over the last couple of years, Glover's been a solid-ish pick. He's had a couple of clangers, but we don't know very much about Susan and Ahmed at A-League level. So that could be their Achilles heel as such. I think that the defence stays intact and the midfield stays intact. Their forwards, they're looking at being more of a Manchester City where they don't play a striker. They just have loads of really good attackers as such, but without a striker, without a focal point, which, you've got to be really good to pull that off.
So I think we'll go a bit quicker because obviously the worse the teams get, there's not as many players there in the squad. But MacArthur, pretty simple. Our boy Denis Genreau got a goal last week. The round ball effect keeps going. And I think he's a lock for the Olyroos. He's been very solid this season despite MacArthur's inconsistency, you have to say.
Yes, 100%. Denis Genreau he's playing the most regular football out of any of the Olyroos involved in the A-League. I think he's only missed one game this season. So I think he's definitely a lock. Everyone else, I think you can make a case for Federici being part of a squad. I'm not sure I'd put him in ahead of Birighitti, though. Tommy Orr has not been playing regularly enough. Alexander Susner and Alexander Jovanovic, maybe, but again, not sure. I would say Denis Genreau is the one that's got more than a 50% chance of being in that team.
I agree.
The wonder is on that basis, considering they're only losing one of their players, MacArthur are fourth at the moment. I reckon that makes them favourites. If this eventuates as we see it going, I think that makes them favourites, considering they only lose one player. And it's not like they're struggling for numbers in midfield either. They've got Puyol, they've got Benyat
as well,
and they've got Jake Holman as well as a sort of younger option.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more there. And MacArthur are just so deep in terms of their quality, and they've got a lot of veteran players as well, and the likes of obviously Lachlan Rose as well could perhaps be a shout for Olyroos. What a story that would be if he manages to make that squad. But I think the hype's died down a little bit for Lockie. For the Wanderers, obviously they've got an abundance of young players. Tate Russell and Tasmota Kudos are locks. Back is not as much. A focal point of that qualification campaign in Thailand this season, he just hasn't really lashed onto some form. It's been quite disappointing. He's not perhaps being deployed in the same positioning that Babel and Di Marini when he was there, where he was placed. However, you got to say that Wilmering is also a shout. Margush has been exemplary this season. He's got the most game time out of all the potential Olyroos keepers in the A-League. Obviously, you've got Ashley Maynard-Burrow overseas, and obviously Tom Glover. But, geez, Bernie Abini and Mitchell Duke front line for the Socceroos looks possible. However, you've got a lot to deal with.
Yeah, Abini, I don't agree that he should be included, but obviously Graham Arnold has come out and said he's in line for a recall. Mitch Duke, he's just been outstanding since he's been back in Australia, and that goes back 2 years. What else can you say? I think if McLaren wasn't around, we'd be saying that he'd be starting for the national team. Again, I think They are sort of similar to Melbourne City. They're losing players in key areas. They're losing their top goalkeeper. If that does eventuate, they're losing at least two of their back line as well. Which again, these are problems that players in positions that, they're difficult to replace with young players because they require so much concentration and focus, which often inexperienced players, like, you might not necessarily see that straight away. You can't just throw them in straight away and find football.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, especially with Wanderers. Is the depth that they have is quite extensive in terms of young players as well. You go to Joe O'Doherty, who's, I think he's been injured for the most of the season. You've got Leslie Otis. Well. Sorry?
Most of last season as well.
Yeah, and you've got Leslie Otis, you've got Much, you've got Dorrans, you've got Ziegler, who barely gets a look into that defense. You've got Georgievski's only played 3 times this season. He's also on a game of 2 halves this weekend as well. Sorry if I've managed to leak that, but there you go. Ziggy Gordon, Dylan McGowan, who's decent. He's not fantastic, but the Wanderers' depth is ultimately what's going to keep them through this finals campaign. And with Janjetovic to come back as well from his shoulder injury, it's only a matter of time before they start kicking into gear. Truly, not just a 3-game winning streak, just to keep that form going on and not losing 4-1 to Melbourne City, for example. Moving on to Sydney FC, who've been quite dreadful in relative terms to last season. It's clear that Alfie was the cog behind that strike force, and Bobo is clearly, I think we could safely say, he's not that great as he used to be. Tom Hewitt-Bell is probably in line. Joel King, Neuenhoff and Ivanovic. I'd say probably Joel King and Hewitt-Bell and Neuenhoff are likely for the Oilers. Neuenhoff has he's been sort of stop and start this season, and Ryan Grant obviously would be a lock for the Socceroos, despite his less than average form this season for Sydney FC. However, you look at some of the other youth players for Sydney FC. Anton Milnaric I believe he's actually at Dinamo Zagreb on loan. Yeah. He might be in there for Oilers. You never know. Graham Arnold has a knack for picking young players overseas, so you never know. He's technically overseas. You've obviously got Patrick Wood, who's had spurts of game time, who might be in line for an appearance as well. So you've got a lot of players here. You've got a lot of options if you're Sydney FC, and Graham Arnold loves his Sydney. So a lot to choose from here.
Yeah, I think with Sydney, again, this brings them back into contention. It's a similar sort of story to MacArthur. They're not losing all of the players that they lose. They've got strength and depth in. I think Joel King, they've also got Michael Zillow that they can turn to. Neuenhoff, Sydney are stacked in midfield and have been for several years now.
Yeah.
Hewitt-Bell is not the starting goalkeeper. I don't think Redmayne is good enough at the moment for a Socceroos appearance.
I think that's consensus at the moment. He's not. He's just not as good as he used to be in terms of
Sydney FC 2017 Redmayne rather than Redmayne of the last 2 years is what we've seen this year.
Absolutely. I think for Perth Glory, I think we'll just start zipping through these. D'Agostino's a clear Oilers aspirant. He's been brilliant. Scored that goal against Uzbekistan to take us through, and Carlo Almiento as well will be a shout. I put Kilkenny for the Socceroos. These are my picks, by the way. I put Kilkenny in for a Socceroos appearance. Now he's 36 or 34?
34.
Yeah, he's old. He's old. Let's not say that he's the oldest. He's 35 actually. Mark Milligan was still playing for the Socceroos at 34, 33. I would not be surprised if Arnold picks up Kilkenny because I believe he's leading the A-League assist rankings, which is stunning for a player of his quality. He's sort of just having a late bloom in the context of the Socceroos. Being someone who has played in England and who possesses that resilience, has played for obviously Preston North End, Leeds United, was a stalwart of that Leeds United midfield back in the day. It really illustrates that he has the quality to be in the Socceroos side, despite his age.
Yeah, if you see what he's doing at Perth Glory, he's the general of that midfield. He's not just a really good technical player, but he's also that guy in the dressing room, that guy on the pitch that is really demanding of the players around him, and it's someone that's very integral to a squad, not just like the 11 that are on the pitch. He's incredibly experienced and just very good at taking the pressure off the defence by picking up the ball, spraying a pass out onto the wing. And I'd say, yeah, I do agree that you can make a case for him to be in the Socceroos. I think, given the midfield that we have at the moment, if it's such a large squad, you can definitely make a case for him being part of that.
Most definitely. I couldn't agree more there. And
I think,
look, yeah.
Also, with the Ollie Roos picks, Brandon Wilson is a shout, and Josh Rawlins is an outside chance.
Well, Rawlins, yeah, he's extremely raw.
Very raw, but being quite good at this level.
Yeah, no, he's played for the Australian under-17, so stepping up 6 years would be quite the jump for him. And seeing players who are now 2 years younger than me makes me feel old. So thanks, Josh. Appreciate it, mate. Moving on to the rest of the I think we'll just zip through this now, like, properly. Dylan Wenzel-Halls and Ramad Akbari. Don't think there's much to say there.
No? Dylan Wenzel-Halls is obviously a huge loss, but yeah, what can you do? I think Kai Shruen, Isaac Powell might be Ollie Roos candidates. Far-fetched, potentially. But yeah, I don't think Brisbane are going to make finals in the first place.
I don't think. I mean, even with the gorgeous Matty Steinman to come, or according to all reports, I don't think that will be a huge finals contender, so to speak. Wellington, Rena Piscopo, Cameron Devlin, Josh Laws, two of them being locks in Piscopo and Devlin. Devlin is far and wide the best midfielder in the A-League. No, I'm joking. He's one of my personal favorites. Just he's a pretty compact midfielder. He's not that tall, and he's just got that technical quality beyond his years, in my opinion. I just think he's just stunning, in my opinion. I think he's really good, like just extremely technically talented. 22, he'll be of the age to make that squad, and he scored that stunning goal against the Wanderers as well, which will help his chances. And Piscopo, obviously, he's been quite good this season. I think Wellington as a whole have been quite disappointing considering everything. However, they're starting to latch onto some form now, so I would not be surprised if they make finals. And just looking at Devlin, he started most of the games this season, and I think it's a matter of time before he starts really kicking into gear as well.
Yeah, I'm echoing those thoughts on Devlin. I think, 100% sure. Same with Piscopo. Wherever Wellington can make finals, there's an outside chance. They had a really dismal start to last season and still made finals. I think they've got enough. I don't think losing Piscopo and Devlin and Laws is huge for them. I think they're well covered on the wings and in midfield. You've got Josh Sirio that can pretty much do the job that Piscopo does, albeit slightly worse, but it's not a huge loss. If you lose attacking wide players, it's not so bad if you lose your central striker or your goalkeeper or your centre half. I think that doesn't really affect them so much.
Yeah. So moving on to West United, you've got Parias, who's been brilliant. He's managed to technically adapt himself to that right wing back position as well, which has been, or even sometimes striker when Ruden's feeling lucky. And obviously Luke Giselle, I think, has been quite good as well. Probably an outside chance for Ollie Roos, but still we'll just put him there anyway. And Josh Risden, assuming he gets back and is able to be firing, he's probably there for the Socceroos as well. I will point out Sebastian Pasquale, who's over here. I did see him play his first minutes in, I think, 9 months on the weekend against the Melbourne Victory youth side, and he was he was the best player on the pitch. I mean, although it was MPL 3 level, there were players there like Leighton Brooks, Ivan Vujitsa, Ion Majok, Jerry Skakardis. I stuffed his pronunciation and I'm commentating tonight, actually. But regardless of the fact, he is, I think, on his best day, Ollie Roos quality. He's obviously had injury niggles and registration issues with Ajax, but I think he's definitely in the firing line there.
Yeah, I think he's an outside chance. I think at the moment, given how many players are getting regular football, he's going to have a very impressive next 3 months.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope he gets minutes tomorrow. I really do. I mean, you think he played 60 minutes against Victory, and look, it's a matter of time, I think, until he really gets into his stride and is able to sort of perhaps perform to the level that we think he's able to. I mean, he was heralded as the next Mark Bresciano or something along those lines. Like, he's a brilliant player. He's able to drive between the lines and play those effective passes into the attacking region. So he would be a big loss for West United in the context of if he's able to be starting for them. At the moment, obviously, he wouldn't be. Newcastle, I think Rabri Najarain and Luka Pershaw, and I think Steven Ugarkovic is in line for a Socceroos appearance. It's a matter of time. He's signing for the Wanderers, and I think with that sort of high credentials that is associated with him, you never know what could happen there.
Yeah, Newcastle aren't going to make finals.
I don't think these teams have any worries in the terms of that. But we just think that Najera and Pershaw and Ugarkovic will make a squad of some nature.
Yeah. I think Lachlan Jackson you can make a case for. Maybe Jack Duncan you could also make a case for. But yeah, I think it's elementary at this point.
Yeah, and Victory Jake Brimmer, that's enough. That's enough. Then let's. I mean, there's Falami's played Ollie Roos, nowhere near a squad. Dylan Ryan stuffed his knee, is nowhere near an Ollie Roos squad. You've got Birkin Kurda is nowhere near Ollie Roos at the moment. At the moment, I'm emphasizing it at the moment. Jay Barnett, nowhere near an Ollie Roos squad. These guys are not quality enough to be. If you look at that pre-existing squad, the best players there are the foreigners. So people with this foreigner recruitment stuff, this agenda, I just think it's a bit ridiculous. Bar possibly Rudy Gestede. I don't think anyone's been glaringly bad. Perhaps Jacob Butterfield as well. But hey, is what it is. We've completely talked about the subject for days upon days upon days, and I think Jake Brimmer's deserved his spot there.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyway, we'll move into the Women's World Cup. It's been a while since that was announced, but nonetheless, the Women's World Cup home cities will be announced. I think we'll just talk briefly about this. Tomorrow is the day, so early tomorrow morning. So the candidate cities are Adelaide, Auckland, Brisbane, Christchurch, Dunedin, Hamilton, Launceston, Melbourne, Newcastle, Perth, Sydney, Wellington as well. Looking at, I don't know how many cities are actually being selected. 9 stadiums. There were 9 stadiums in 2019, so they're expecting more this year. Excuse my short-sightedness and knowing nothing about Women's World Cup stadium usage. My apologies there. However, I think Hindmarsh is a lock. Eden Park is very good for football. Brisbane Stadium being, I think, at Suncorp. I'm not too familiar with Christchurch. Dunedin as well. Hamilton. I think Launceston, they have to get a purpose-built football stadium there in order to actually render themselves available. I don't think Launceston is a viable candidate for that. Amy Park, obviously. McDonald's Jones as well. HBF Park, and I think the aforementioned Sydney Football Stadium is also in the firing line if they're able to build that up in time. I have seen some construction and it looks very positive, but I don't know exactly why Bankwest is not included in there. But hey, look, there are reasons for which we should know. I think Bankwest should be prioritized over SFS, but that's just my opinion.
As a Grand Prix finals, I think Bankwest you could have a case for it, but Compare it to those two, I'm not so certain that it's a World Cup venue. It's potential, depending on the situation with COVID. Obviously, it's horrible to think that in a year's time, 2 years' time, it might still be kicking around, but we don't know what the crowds are going to be like or anything like that. So, but if they are, 100%, I think Bankwest is a little bit small for a World Cup, given what we saw in.
Amy Park's 30,000 as well, mate.
Pardon?
Amy Park's 30,000 as well, but we won't talk about that. We won't talk about that. It's all right.
Melbourne doesn't have any better options.
Melbourne doesn't have any better options. I mean, besides maybe what I don't think the AFL will be too happy with us using Marvel Stadium for, let's call it the Melbourne Dockland Stadium. I don't want to hear that awful stadium name mentioned on this podcast. But I think the sentiment's there. I think we don't really think that. Yeah, I think from Australia, I can't really speak for New Zealand. It'd be a bit unfair to, but I think out of Australia, I don't think York Park is viable unless they build a purpose-built football stadium. But if that is the case, then I think Newcastle's probably on the chopping block, unfortunately. But hey, is what it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to think about Perth because that is a very small stadium. I'd like to see it there, obviously, because that's a huge region that's without any of the football there.
Just put the stadium into rectangular mode, mate.
I think they're talking about HBF Park, aren't they?
Yeah, well, just put Optus Stadium into rectangular mode. There you go. You got a stadium. I love how they're just using purpose-built football stadiums. Though it's really good.
Yeah, that for sure. That's a big. They could have just gone. Yeah, we'll just put it in the MCG, and it would have been.
That's what they tried for the actual World Cup bit. Like not the actual World Cup bit. I'm sorry, I'm not referring to the men's one as the real one. No. The Women's World Cup is extremely prestigious. When we bid for the Men's World Cup bid, we put forward the MCG. Ignore that.
Rubbish. Don't want that in the World Cup. The games are pretty soulless as it is, but if you want the players to be 100 meters away from the fans, it's just rubbish.
Hold on, am I seeing this right?
This isn't Adelaide United versus Brisbane Roar.
Oh, this is not Adelaide United versus Brisbane Roar. What the hell is this? What am I watching? This is fantastic. Thank you, APL. I thought you'd improved. No, it's just a mishap. But anyway, we'll go into the A-League previews. We've got a big Good Friday Eve match tomorrow, doubleheader. West United taking on Melbourne City in the Not a Derby fixture. Hopefully the highlights do not lag. But anyway, yeah, as I mentioned before, Melbourne City went to town here. 4 goals, 3 of them which were outstanding. Look, Naboo got a goal. To think that Naboo hasn't scored a goal this season prior to this one is just ridiculous.
I mean, he has been the catalyst of their forms recently. He's come back and they've been outstanding. So he's been effective without necessarily scoring goals, and then now he's got a goal. So I think the rest of the league is in a bit of trouble now.
Yeah, it's going to be a very difficult one. Let me just try and get these highlights back up. But nonetheless, I do think that they are a lock for A-League finals contention. It just seems that Kisnorbo just figured this team out, which is promising. But nonetheless, West United, they are coming off a week off, so that might be to their disadvantage. However, look, I think it's a very interesting fixture. I think you can safely say that Melbourne City will take this one home, but I think that West United do have a chance. They're able to they've never beaten West United, and we know though that Jamie McLaren's going to score. So there we go.
Yeah, I mean, West United, the way they play, the way they attack, they could be taken to town. They could just be quite easily picked apart by that Melbourne City attack. So it's going to be. I think the only chance United sounds really naive, but to outscore them by they'll concede 2 or 3, but they could easily score 3 or 4, as we saw in the Perth game. They've just got that sort of attack where, they took MacArthur apart and they weren't particularly, MacArthur did get a lot of chances in that game. It's certainly not impossible that West United could win, but they're up against it.
They're so up against it, and the quirkiness of this first goal from City, from Craig Noon, which I might add, we're not focusing on the main man, Craig Noon, who was far and wide the best player in that fixture. So there you go. Perth Glory against MacArthur FC. Oh, what is going on? What is going on here? I have managed to put on a game from ages ago. This is a bit of a mistake. Yeah, my apologies. Anyway, we'll just try and reconvene and get that done. But anyway, we'll be talking about the Perth Glory next, taking on the Newcastle Jets. Last week, they got a win there. They somehow, some way, they managed to hold on to that 2-1 lead. That's a bit harsh, isn't it? But I think regardless of the fact, look, they were good. Perth Glory back into action. We thought that they'd be not really finals contenders. However, look, they're playing good football. Andy Keogh not scoring this season is a definite cause for concern here. And the red card obviously was quite horrific. Wait, what was that free kick for?
That was the first yellow card from Asprey. But it's debatable whether it was a yellow card or not. It just looks like he goes over of his own accord. What a bit of flair.
Anyway, yeah, now that was a brilliant goal for the Glory. But I think, look, MacArthur, they got that win last week. John Rowe got them the goal against, I believe it was Wellington. The Glory, contrastingly, they looked good against the Jets. It's not really that hard to look good against the Jets nowadays, at least, unless you're the on victory. However, look, this game could go either two ways. I think both sides have been relatively inconsistent. MacArthur coming off a win, both sides coming off a win. The confidence will be there in strides. But I think it's just which team is able to fire from kickoff. As Perth Glory set the tempo early and able to break the Jets down and through various set pieces and segments in play. So that's my 2 cents at least. What are your 2 cents, Karen?
Yeah, I think MacArthur, I would say, are slight favourites for this. Perth's away form is pretty dismal. They just struggle away from home. They are either hanging on in games, maybe scrapping to get a point, maybe trying to get a late goal to win it, or they are just taken apart, as we saw against Wellington and Western Sydney. And I think MacArthur, they've got Matt Derbyshire, who is pretty clinical now. They've just got such a quality team that Perth are going to be missing Aspropatomidis. Langkamp's not going to be back, I don't think. I think he's still got a wrist issue. So probably be Luke Bodner that starts. He definitely looked solid against Central Coast Mariners. He was fantastic against them. But it's another big test for Perth, and I think MacArthur have probably just got a little bit too much quality. I think you're right about who starts hardest. I think Perth have got a tendency in away matches to sit back when they are away from home, and it just never ever goes well for them. They start with an uphill battle from the start, and I think if you do that against a team like MacArthur are there to be got at in defence. We've seen that they're not the most consistent team. So if they go at them at the start, then it could be a good game. But anything less than that, Perth are going to struggle.
Yeah, I echo your sentiments, and look, it's one of those clashes in the A-League that will really determine which teams are more possess more mental fortitude as well. I think psychologically, this battle is huge for both sides as well. So, look, I think could go either way, but no, I do agree that MacArthur most likely favourites. It appears we're having some issues with the video, but we'll just go into this last one: Victory versus Sydney. This is funnily enough, Victory have a chance here. I would not be surprised if they're able to sneak a victory here. They look better against Central Coast. They got that draw, which is big in terms of their confidence. Not to everyone else, though. They still think that Victory will get completely demolished. But Sydney FC, they've been quite poor. Let's not dispute the fact that they've been poor. I do think that Victory could snag a point here, possibly a win, but I do think Sydney FC do have the upper hand in any circumstance, or most circumstances at least.
Yeah, Sydney have been poor. I think we can't dispute that. Traditionally, they've, from a Perth point of view, they've just gone to HBF Park and torn it up. So to go there and be held to a draw, it just shows how bad a season they're having. Frankly, we say it, how bad a season. They're sixth in the league in the highest quality season that we've had for a while. But I still think that they will come out on top against Melbourne Victory. Victory is just abysmal, frankly. And at home with the crowd, the crowd are against them. They're not. As soon as they go a goal down, it's game over. So I can only see it being a Sydney win. I'm happy to be proved wrong, but I don't see a way that Melbourne Victory win this game.
Yeah, you definitely have a rational point there. And look, I think it's just a matter of which side is able to maintain that tempo throughout the match. I think Victory definitely had missteps there, but look, it is what it is, and we'll see how things transpire in this one. But I think nonetheless, there's much to look forward to this weekend. We've also got Adelaide versus Central Coast Mariners as well. We don't have time to go through that, but we'll make sure to ensure that things are able to, be covered to the best way possible. Thank you for joining us on the Round Ball warm up once again. I was your host, Neil Simons, and make sure you catch me on the NPL Victoria live stream in about 2 hours. We're taking a big game tonight. We've got the Bentley Greens up against Avondale, a number of former A-League players playing for both sides, the El Iradacunda, Ben Carrigan, Stefan Valentini, Joey Katabian. There's plenty more. However, that's definitely one to not miss out on. And all the best to both sides. And thank you, Cameron, for joining me once again.
Thank you for having me again. Good luck with your call tonight.
Easy, mate. All right, see you later.